Welcome to Uniting the Cults. Thank you for joining me, Redwing.
Uh, Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So this is our second episode. And last episode, we were supposed to talk about something we never got around to talking about because we were so interested in like the intro, finding out about you. And then we just went on talking for an hour and a half. So now we're finally talking about what we intended to talk about. And
Yes,
I want to
yes.
tell the audience what it was a little bit. So I found this post in the ex-Muslim subreddit. Sorry, ex-Muslim subreddit. And the title was "We Should Do Something ASAP." And it's kind of long. And the first thing I do is I skim every post before I try to read it all. And when I skimmed it, I barely read anything when I skim. I thought it was so good and interesting. And apparently, I thought the person who made this put a lot of effort into it. And because I think, stuff like this, it's really hard to understand what people are thinking just from a post. And when I write posts, I really write it short. So, maybe people think that all the information is in the post when really there's a book behind it, a book's worth of information behind it. So I
Yes.
thought it made more sense to try to get you on the podcast to learn about what you're trying to teach us here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show people real quick this post, and then we'll take it off the screen. So here it is, and looks like you got a bunch of comments. I skimmed the comments a little bit, so here's me. Would you like to talk about this on the podcast?
That's us, right? That's we
Yeah,
talk.
yeah,
At first, I
and
was confused. Like, no one asked me to do a podcast together. It was first time.
yeah,
Yesterday's podcast was my first time.
yeah. Generally, well, I don't have a lot of followers yet. Generally, podcasters, they might have a team of people who they
Yeah.
discuss and maybe things are done over the phone, not in Reddit posts. And
Yeah.
yeah,
We
so
all
anyway,
start from somewhere.
yeah, so somebody here replied 100, 100, 100. I didn't see that. A lot of people were thinking you were saying bad things, but
There was this one guy who thought yeah, that's what
yeah,
he thought I was promoting a hate campaign, but in
yeah,
reality, what I wanted to do was just an awareness campaign. It's not hate; it's just awareness.
yeah. So why don't you tell the audience um, what you're trying to accomplish, what you think we should do, and try to say, as if nobody read your post yet.
So, I think this podcast can be divided into parts, into sections, where each section has a particular goal. So the first section can be telling the audience what's happening right now around the world in like among and then we will discuss some interesting things that happened in the past.
You mean specifically related to Islam, right?
Yeah, it is related to Islam. That's related to Islam, and then we will also gonna uh, talk about what we should do so that we can prevent things which are bad for humans or freedom of speech, stuff like that in the future.
So is that a
So
good way of summarizing that first question?
the first question,
Yeah,
yeah,
you see
what's
at the bottom
happening
there?
right now and what happened in the past, and based on those two, what might happen in the future, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So that's in topic, but the thing you wrote down, that's fine, and that's fine, that's good enough.
Yeah,
What's
I think
happening right now?
what's happening right now is it's including recent history.
Yeah,
I mean,
including recent history.
we
Yes.
could talk about 1400 years ago if we wanted to.
No, 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 no. That's not the point. When I said
Okay.
I'm in the past, it was uh, not more than the last 200 years. Not more than that.
Okay.
200 is also a big number.
Yeah, yeah, it
So
is. For a lot of people, yeah, when they're used to only the news they heard in during their lifetime as
yes,
adults.
yes.
Yeah.
So basically, in the entire world right now, all these countries can be categorized into three parts, where based on Islam, the influence of Islam on the Muslim population, we can divide all the countries into three parts. So the first one is countries where there is no Islam, or there is a negligible influence of it, and there are many countries. The entire South American continent, the Latin America, entire South American continent, the Muslim population is barely negligible in that. And then we have South African countries like Zimbabwe, so, and then Angola, countries like those. There are around 3 to 5 countries there where there is not a lot of Muslim population, the south part of African continent. So in all these countries, including the US, even in the US, the population of Muslims is around 2%, I guess, in the entire United States. So in these countries, US is the only exception. US is the sole exception. Apart from that, there is nothing happening related to Islam. Most people don't see them in their day-to-day lives, so they are probably safe for the next 100 years from Islam. The second category of countries where Muslims are a minority, but they have a significant portion of population.
Like the
For example,
UK.
yeah, the UK and the entire Europe, because of the immigration in the recent years, and countries like Australia, Canada,
I'm
India.
guessing it's not the entire Europe, right? I'm guessing there's countries in Europe that are not that didn't bring in a lot of Muslims. There has to be, right? There's a lot
Well,
of countries there.
Poland has no immigration for now. Poland is safe. Portugal, even in Portugal,
Okay, so you
there are
mean
not.
the most of Europe? Okay,
Most majority of Europe,
yeah.
majority of Europe. Well, there were Muslims before the immigration. For example, in United States, there were a lot of Muslims even before the immigration. There were a lot of them even before the immigration, and they just increased after the immigration. So, including India, Australia, and Canada, these countries have a significant portion, but they're not a lot. They don't have enough power to dominate. But the Europe, it's happening in Europe, but people are resisting now. The people are trying to vote right wing politicians in hopes to curb immigration policy, to reduce immigration, and if possible, they want to send the immigrants back to their country so that there won't be any
Well, at
much
least the
violence.
criminals.
Yeah, at least the criminals,
Yeah,
people who do all
and I
these.
want to be clear to the audience. There are cases of Muslim immigrants, let's say in the UK, committing crimes. No, 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 worse than that. I'm trying to remember it. Cases where they're actually illegal. They're not even supposed to be there. They're not there legally yet, but they haven't been kicked
Yeah.
out, and they've committed crimes, and they have not been kicked out.
Yes, there is a illegal immigration, and also people committed a lot of violent acts. Not just It's not just the crime. The crime is associated with their religion. For example, 2 years ago, as I said in the previous podcast, a French teacher was beheaded just because he showed the students a portrait or a scripture of the Prophet Muhammad, and the radicals beheaded him. And what happened is that the entire school got hate because of that one teacher, and the school, instead of protecting the teacher, they just thrown him to the people, like they surrendered him to them. It's
Which
like
country?
France. It's 2 years ago, I guess, 2 to 3 years ago. That and actually the student, a female student, who claimed that even though she resisted, that the story goes like this: a female student comes to home and says to their parents that even though she resisted, her French teacher, in front along with her co-students, showed the Prophet Muhammad's uh, photo without their consent. I mean, against their consent. and their parents became outraged, and it became a very big news, and the school got a lot of hate for the teacher, and the school responded by condemning the act of the teacher and submitting him to the radicals when the radicals protested in front of the school. And the radicals, one guy, he beheaded the teacher. He and and later it was found out that the female student, was not actually present in the class in the first place. She wasn't even present. So I guess the case is still running right now. A few students are still under investigation. It's still under investigation in France.
Hmm.
And also there were libraries were burnt in France because someone burned the Quran, because they, like, people burned entire libraries in the past few years, and there was a lot of destruction to the public property in France. So things like that are happening. They are the second type of countries, and in the third type, there are, as we have guessed, like Muslim majority countries like the Turkey, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, etc. So we discuss about these countries, and then we will uh, talk about a few important things that happened in the past 200 years of the Islamic history, like how the Salafi movement was supposed to be the revival of Islam, and how the the things that happened to Afghanistan and stuff. And then we will try to predict what can happen. And after that, in the next part of the podcast, like the later part, the end, I will tell my opinion that what we can do about to prevent the spreading of Islam, and also uh, I can give my opinion whether Islam is gonna stay or it's weakened or it won't stay in the next 200 years. If it does stay, what
So let
what
me
is
walk you through
helping?
this. What do you think is significant 200 years ago that matters today about this?
Well, for example, in the past 200 years, I'm not speaking things in chronological order, not listing things in chronological order, but a few things that worth remembering is that once Afghanistan was a well developed country, but it ended up in the hands of Taliban because it was funded by, some people say the West funded Taliban so that they
Well,
can.
let's clarify for the audience. In the 1980s, the USSR invaded Afghanistan. Afghanistan obviously was trying to stop them. They got help from the US. And
Yes,
who is the they specifically? It wasn't the government that received the help. It was a group who called themselves the Mujahideen. And for the audience who doesn't know Arabic, Mujahideen means people who do jihad. That is just a grammar term.
yes,
It's
jihadist.
Mujahideen is from the root word jihad. And jihad just means struggle for God. And
Yeah,
of course there's the negative version, which is offensive war to spread Islam, which is how Islam spread to begin with, outside of the desert of what's today Saudi Arabia. Actually, to the rest of Saudi Arabia, it's spread by the sword, offensive war, just to spread Allah. And then I'm pretty sure this is valid in the sense that it's spoken about in Islam. There's defensive jihad, which I see no problem with, by the way, as long as it's actually defensive. So the example in Afghanistan was the Mujahideen started a defensive war from USSR's offensive war. And the US helped. And what's really cool about how we helped was we gave, I don't think we gave money or people, soldiers. We gave some basic weapons that were very cheap compared to what we were defending against, which was helicopters. So we were giving little rocket shoulder over the shoulder rocket launchers to take down USSR helicopters, and the price difference is like 1 to 100 or more than that. So, and that succeeded. Okay, we helped. US helped the Mujahideen make USSR stop. They quit, and actually the next year the USSR stopped existing.
Yes.
Okay, so it might have helped. We might have helped the USSR end, and it broke up into Russia and all the other countries. Uh, so go ahead, continue. I just wanted to clarify that for people.
Yeah. So basically, what happened? The first when the Taliban came around 1980s, I guess, it caused a lot of destruction in the name
Tell
of
people
Islam.
what the Taliban is in relation to the Mujahideen.
Well, the Taliban, according to the West, they are not an official government. The West doesn't recognize them as the official government of Afghanistan. But
Well, let me clarify for this way. Okay, the Mujahideen, once that war was over, they didn't just disband. Now they wanted to take over the country, and
yeah,
I think that's where the name Taliban came.
yes,
So it was the
I'm not sure.
Mujahideen that became the Taliban.
I'm not sure about it, but all I know is that they didn't dissipate and they tried ruling the country and forced Sharia there, and
Yes, they were doing
they
that,
declared themselves as the ruling government of the nation of
which means they
Afghanistan.
started a civil war.
Yeah, but people obeyed because they are powerless. People were powerless, but they
You mean there
left.
wasn't a war?
There wasn't a war. I don't know. I don't have that knowledge
Yeah,
of
I
it.
guess both of us are a little light on the history on this part, but
Yes, history of
go
Afghanistan.
ahead. Go ahead.
And it first came once and then it left. I don't know how. I guess after the 9/11, the after the 9/11 incident, the American government started bombing Afghanistan, I guess. And then because of that, probably the Afghanistan Taliban, it dispersed. And for next 20 years Afghanistan was progressing, but again Taliban got hold of Afghanistan, and now it's still there. Still now it's still
So
there.
let's clarify a little bit more for people. So once the Mujahideen and the U.S. together beat USSR, and then after that, they became the Taliban and tried to take over Afghanistan. That means they also held some land and they were able to build themselves as a fighting force, and they started spreading around the world, having little units, cells all over the world. Which that's how the name Al Qaeda started too.
Yeah,
Okay, and then 9/11 was the culmination of that. The Al Qaeda had been planning to do 9/11 for years before that, and then they succeeded. And then the U.S. decided at that point that they're going to stop Al Qaeda and
yeah,
everyone that was involved with 9/11. And actually, there was a law that is still on the books today in the U.S. It's a very short paragraph. I read it once, and it basically allows the president, U.S. president, to initiate war not with a state, but with anyone who we think was involved in 9/11, which could be anywhere on the planet.
yeah.
And I'm saying this to say that it's a bad thing. This is a bad thing that we did, and it's bad that we still have it. This has been going on more than 20 years now, 23 years.
Okay.
Anyway, that's a different topic, but it's related, Um,
So
because
the main,
because it's related because this is the U.S.'s attempt at a solution. We're trying to talk about a solution too.
yes.
So go on.
So basically, the point why I brought up Afghanistan was that the Taliban, the US funded them, and they promoted radicalization. So they said they used religion to manipulate the people to fight for Afghanistan, to fight against USSR. And so, and if you see Turkey, then another example, in Turkey 100 years ago Ataturk tried to secularize the nation.
Yeah,
He even succeeded,
he
and
was
Turkey
also an
was,
openly atheist.
yes. Well, I don't know about that.
He
To
did
be
more
whether
than
he,
that. He did things like he switched the alphabet from the Arabic alphabet
To
to
Latin.
Latin alphabet. And today Turkey still uses a Latin alphabet. To me, that's crazy. You can switch that.
Yeah. Well,
I guess that means a
Ataturk's,
lot of people were going along with it and liked the idea. Like they'd
yes,
rather be aligned with Europe than with the Arab world.
yes. Actually, Ataturk's, what in his mind, what he believed is that Islam is not right. He never agreed with Islam. So he considered Turkey as a nation for Turkish culture, but not for Arab Islamization. So he wanted to stop that, and he did. He was successful, right? And
Very
100 years,
successful.
very successful.
I'd
People,
like to say for the audience what one metric I think of for the success of this. Today, if you look on all the subreddits that are for ex-Muslims, and they're divided up by nations, right? There's an ex-Muslim group for Turkey, there's an ex-Muslim group for Syria, and so on. If you look at the population of each of those in the subreddits, I mean, and compare them to the population of the people in that country, by far Turkey wins. By far. Then the next closest one is Egypt, and it's pretty far away. So that gives you an idea of how successful Ataturk was.
the people were very secular. Right? He removed the hijabs when working in offices at that time, and that's one thing that the current president or prime minister, I don't know, Ednok is his name, right? The Turkish prime minister or president.
Erdogan, is it?
Erdogan, yeah, I don't know the pronunciation. So the
Yeah.
Erdogan, he brought that back. Now you can wear the hijab if you want to in workspaces in Turkey. Well, people don't like Erdogan. His own countrymen
Well,
don't like that.
let's be clear. Some of people do like him, and then there's a lot. The people
Yeah.
that like Ataturk are the people that don't like Erdogan. Those are
Yes.
opposite. Yeah.
Yes.
And if I
Especially,
understand correctly, there's more Ataturk people than Erdogan people. There's more people that want secularism than people that want what's the opposite of secularism? A religious dictatorship.
uh, let's say people who want an Islamic state.
Yes, religious dictatorship. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
The first thing that Erdogan did is he converted the famous museum into a masjid, into a mosque. What is Sophia something? The museum's name. So it was very famous. It was built in Roman times, I guess. It's still preserved. It's a monument, and Ataturk made it a museum, converted it into a museum. But now Erdogan has made it into a mosque. So why I'm bringing this up is because even though Turkey had left Islam for 100 years, it got so much progress in 2001, 2002 until 2003. Things were pretty good. They were like women were not even wearing hijab or niqab. They were openly wearing short dresses, openly revealing, but people were okay with that. And LGBTQ was very well received there. They have no problems with that. They had no problems. But when Erdogan came, now it's been nearly 15 years and things are going back downhill. Things are going downhill. And recently in 2024 elections in Turkey, he won by 55%. 44% people didn't vote him. Okay. And when asked in Turkish Reddit, if you hate Erdogan so much, why did you vote for him? People said they had no choice. The opposition was very weak, so they had to choose the Erdogan because his opposition was not that good. So and people said they won't vote for him, they won't elect him in the next elections, which is 2028, I guess, in 2028. So if if good things are going to happen, then Erdogan won't be the president or prime minister of Turkey anymore in the next 5 years. And why I brought up Turkey and why I brought up Afghanistan is because no matter how forward the nation progresses, even if it leaves Islam behind, as long as the majority of the population follow Islam, there is always a chance for the nation to go back.
I'm not so sure. I'm gonna try to make your claim even stronger. It doesn't have to be a majority. It can be a minority if the minority is louder and more
Yeah.
aggressive.
Yes. Yeah,
So it's
that's
not even
also
just the
possible.
majority, because I think you can have a quiet majority. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I think we have that. We had that in Syria. The Syrian president, him and his father, for the past, I don't know how, it's like 6 decades now. They are secular. Okay, they do claim to be Muslims. What flavor? Starts with Alawi. Okay, that's the sect of Islam. Um, but they run their country in a secular way. They don't. They have civil laws, not laws that are necessarily Islamic. And the majority of that country is Muslims. Okay, so this is a minority. Uh, Alawi is already a minority. I think it's a tiny percentage. Okay, and then the concept of being a secular country, I think that is also a minority in Syria. And so the minority is winning over the majority in Syria for, I'm talking about before the Civil War. When the Civil War happened, ISIS was formed,
Yes.
and it became more equal. It's a civil war between the existing government, which is trying to be secular, and a bunch of people near a majority who are trying to overthrow that government and reinstitute or institute a Islamic State. ISIS is an acronym for Islamic State of Iraq and Syria.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just an acronym. They named themselves that. Um, yeah. So continue. I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
so why the examples of these two countries is important? Because, as I said, as long as Muslims have power in a country, if they have a portion of power, they will always try to bring Islamic State back. Everything was fine until 1800s, but 1800s we uh, Salafi movement became popular. From because of that, things started to go downhill.
I'd like to do a clarification, please. I don't think it's fair to say that all Muslims are this way or every version of Muslim is this way. I think there are plenty of Muslims who prefer secularism
Yeah, there
because
are.
because they don't want to be persecuted by the other Muslims.
They stay
You know what I
silent.
mean? Whatever country you're in, if you're a minority in the sense that you're still a Muslim, but you're of the minority sect. So if you're well, let's do a real example. So in Iran, I think it's no, let's do Iraq. It's not. Oh, man, I wish I remember the numbers. I think it's 90% Sunni, 10% Shia.
I guess Iran is a Shia majority country.
Well, I switched to Iraq. Sorry. And so if you're in the minority and the majority is another flavor of Islam, the minority is getting persecuted. So I understand why these minority Muslims want secularism because it protects them from the other Muslims.
And it also more than that. So in a country where Sharia is imposed, or the government is ruled by Islamic law, then people, uh, the religion will be rubbed on their face, forced. It will be forced on them, and most people don't like that,
Yeah,
especially the
even
younger
even the
generation.
ones who consider themselves, Muslims, like, and
Yes.
strong Muslims, not just barely Muslim or whatever. That's vague terms here, but people who imagine themselves they would never leave Islam,
Yeah.
and they're
Even they
full
don't like
Muslim.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't want the persecution that comes with
Yes.
an Islamic State.
So that's why this is important, because it can always get a revival. Let's see, around 1800 time, Muslims were pretty good. They've progressed, even though the religion itself is incompatible with modern times. Many people became modernist. They were not even, they were religious in their own mind, but what they did compared to 1400s, there was a very big change. They were adopting to modern times, and someone pointed out that, hey, we are moving away from our religion, and then they try to go back to their roots. That's what
Yeah, let's
Salafism, right?
explain for people what they're experiencing there. And I want to be clear for the audience. This happens in cases that have nothing to do with Islam or even religion, I'm pretty sure. So what these Muslims are seeing in whatever country they're in, let's say, I don't know, let's pick Syria because that's where my parents are from. When they see what's happening in the US or the West, and when they see bad things, first of all, they're being selective. They're not looking at all the good things and saying, let's adopt some of the Western values that produce awesome stuff like cars and cell phones and stuff like that. Instead, they're selectively looking at the bad things, and they think it's a package deal. They think if we adopt Western values, that means automatically we're going to get the bad stuff too. So they think of things like uh, let's go really aggressive, okay? Like the worst things. The worst things are things like, at least the worst things that people think are really bad. I, and I like as an example, rampant
Like,
rampant porn
yeah.
and and porn getting more aggressive and like let's say kids watching porn. All the bad things. I agree, a lot of that is bad, okay? But just because you adopt some Western values doesn't mean you're going to be that lifestyle. There's lots of Americans and other Westerners that aren't into those things.
Yes.
That doesn't make us not Western.
So everything was fine until then, but Salafi movement happened and Wahhabi movement happened, and because of these things, like, it's not important when, like, there were revival movements trying aimed to bring Islam back, bring it. So how they do it is not so important. It can happen again in the future, and they name it another thing. So as long as Islam exists, as long, even though people become moderates, even though people adopt different values, they, even though they move on with time, there can always something that happen, like the Salafi movement, which can make people go back to there. Like, it's a circle. No matter how hard you move forward, you go, there is a very high chance that people gonna relapse, like, in that terminology. They may start the, it won't take long for them, because the religion itself is like that, the Quran itself is like that, which openly says there is only one way to reach heaven, or one way to pray for Allah, to be a good Muslim. There is only one way to be a good Muslim. You follow the Quran word by word, right? Because being a Muslim, there is no good Muslim and bad Muslim, unlike other religions, right? In other religions, you can cherry pick what you want. For example, in Hinduism, there are many parts. There is no certain rules or practices that you have to practice on a daily basis. When it comes to Hinduism or Buddhism, Jainism, they have no rules. You can, you just need to have faith. You just need to be curious. But when it comes to Abrahamic religions, in particular, Judaism is, it had reforms. Christianity had reforms. Both of them were just like Islam a few hundred years ago, but they reformed with time. When in 1600s, when the Renaissance period came, when the church and state got separated, when the power, when scientific inventions happened, Christianity lost power. It lost power. People stopped taking Christianity seriously.
But
Only a
they were
few people.
trying hard to stop the the science and the people who were doing science. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
in the 1600s they were still trying to persecute them. No
Yes.
different than in ancient Greece. I speak about ancient Greece very highly, like Socrates, but Socrates himself, the state killed him, and the state killed him, and his crime was, in their words, uh, corrupting the minds of young children.
Well, they're gonna name it anything they want because they are afraid of losing power. If people stop believing in their religion, people will they can't control the church can't control
Well, in
them
this
anymore.
case, I'm not even sure. In the ancient Greece case, I'm not even sure it was about religion. But yeah, the religions are having the same problem. They want mind control.
Yes, they want people to believe the religion so that they can control them, and that's why they impose so many laws. For example, around 1500s and 1600s, Galileo and Charles Darwin, both of them had gone so much trouble for the scientific inventions and discoveries that they made, and that's why even in Islam people don't like science. Okay, many people don't like science. They see it something as a western thing, but in reality it's not. And that's why you see Muslims in general, Muslim countries contribute to 0.3% of scientific things, science discoveries,
I'd like
inventions.
to give another metric for people. I once saw somebody counted uh, how many books are translated into Spanish every year compared to how many books are translated into Arabic every year, and it was a difference of 1 to 1,000. 1,000 more books are translated into Spanish than into Arabic every year.
Yeah, because people are not interested or reluctant. Even if they are, they can't openly say it. And most countries, in most so that's why I guess we have became off topic, I guess. So we discussed about the
No, I don't
past.
think it's really off topic. I think all of this is on topic. We're explaining, the here right now we're explaining the problem, and
Yes.
soon we're gonna get to the solution.
Yes. So
Yeah.
people need to understand what's happened, what's the current situation, what happened. We discuss about what happened. So what's happening in the world right now? As I said, in majority of countries there are not a lot of Muslim population. Based in south parts of Africa, in South American continent, the entire South American continent, there are not a lot of people. Even in Japan, South Korea, there are not a lot of people. US, 1% of population are Muslim, and even though they are Muslim, because of the Western culture, they are culturally Muslim. Okay, most of them don't even practice Islam. Even if they do, it's a very light version of Islam. They
Yeah, let
probably
me tell people the light version of some of them, okay? I'm going to explain. Um, I'm going to try to not make this so close to home, okay? There's this person I know. He's a father, and uh, his mother is dead, okay? And what I see, and there's like nothing he does that's Islamic, except maybe when he turns on the TV, he likes to hear the Quran sometimes, especially during Ramadan. He does he does fast during Ramadan. He does pray sometimes, not very often, definitely not every day, and
yes,
only during Ramadan and only at the mosque.
he probably don't eat pork, I guess.
That's correct. Does not eat pork. He
Yeah,
does sometimes drink alcohol, but almost
yes.
never. Almost never.
For
Um,
most people, the light version of Islam is just that: don't eat
yeah,
pork, don't
yeah, yeah,
drink
yeah. You were
alcohol.
telling me. I remember the
Yeah,
last episode. Yeah. I
yes,
want to say one
don't.
more thing. I think the only reason this person stays a Muslim, if you can call it a Muslim, is that if he rejected Islam, it would feel to him as if he is shitting on his mother's grave.
Oh,
And he does not want to shit on his mother's grave. So he stays
okay.
a Muslim. And of course, there's another part of it, which is, he's it's related to, all the other Muslims that he knows. And, most of his family is still Muslim. And he doesn't want to face the the
Rejection.
the conflict. Yeah, rejection.
Yes.
Yes, yes, rejection. He doesn't want to face the confrontation of having a discussion with a family member Wait, you're not Muslim now? I can't believe that. He doesn't want that.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't want confrontation. It's a very normal thing to not
it's
want
like,
confrontation because sometimes it sucks.
yes, and it's unnecessary. You can avoid it most of the time.
And the way this person avoids it is, I'm a Muslim.
Yeah.
But there's no bad parts of it.
Yes.
Except, I'll be clear though, it is health-wise, it is bad. Now he can't even do fasting because he has diabetes. And, you know, Ramadan contributes to diabetes. And I mean the way people are doing it. And I'm not saying there isn't a way to do it where it wouldn't, you know, cause havoc to your
Yes.
insulin system, but the way people
Well,
do it normally, and this is from my own memory, okay, you know, just so people know what Ramadan is, you know, fasting every day for 30 days or 29 days, 28 days, whatever the fuck it is. You're fasting from sun up to sundown.
yes.
And you know, that's different. Those times are different all around the world, right? If you're in the North Pole, the sun doesn't come up or down, it's just up. If you're in the South Pole, it's just down. So it makes no sense in those areas. And you know, if you're very far north of the equator, you have a very short day. If you're very south of the equator,
Yes.
it's a very long day. Am I getting that right? Or the opposite? And it changed, you know, every year, wherever you are, if you stay stationary on the earth, every year those times change.
Yeah.
And what else? So, like for me, when I was a Muslim, a bunch of it was, you know, you wake up at 4 a.m. and you gorge. You eat a lot. You eat as much as you can because
Yes.
you're not gonna eat until maybe 7 o'clock in the PM. So that's 15 hours. And
Yes.
I want to be clear to everyone, that's also not drinking water. It's also not taking medicine.
Also, no saliva. Some people don't even. Uh,
Kiss? They won't kiss their
not.
wife?
No, no, no. When I was in school, my friends who were practicing Ramadan, they said whenever they have to spit, they used to spit the saliva. They didn't what
That
to
is
say.
so fucking retarded. I never heard of that. That is so retarded.
They don't even let their saliva goes into the stomach. They don't let it pass
That
into their
is ridiculous.
throats.
Can I ask you, just kind of for fun, is there anywhere in the Quran or Hadith that specifically says don't swallow your saliva?
I don't know. I don't
You
know.
don't know. But either way, it's dumb. Whether it's in there or not, it's fucking stupid. I'm sorry, Muslims, hearing this. I'm sorry to say that.
Well, actually, most Muslims who say dying during Ramadan is actually a good thing, you directly go to heaven. That's their argument against what about people with illnesses? What about people who have to consume medicine?
Well,
That's what they say.
okay. I want to clarify for people, since you just brought up what lets you go to heaven. I want to clarify for people the logic that Muslims use, okay? And obviously, I don't mean all Muslims. So when I was 19 years old, there was another Muslim, and I want to say this too. I was a Muslim all the way through 32 years old. When I was 19, there was another person roughly my age. We were talking about things, and he said something like, and I think he was saying this to test to see how I think. He said something like, "You see that phone over there? I think it wasn't attended." And he said something like, "Why don't you take it?" And I thought, "What do you mean? Why don't I take it? That's stealing." And
Oh,
he said, "Well, no one's watching." And I got really angry and shocked. I said, "I'm watching."
okay.
And later, I'm getting angry now. Later, this is when I was 19. I'm 46 now. Imagine that kind of shit still makes me angry.
Hmm.
Later, I recognized something. So that means this person who's a Muslim, he didn't even say, "Well, Allah's watching." And maybe that's why he was asking me the question. He was testing to see what I would say, because I could have said Allah's watching, but I didn't. I said, "I'm watching." I
Yeah.
didn't even think about Allah at the time.
Okay.
Now, a second story, the same person, okay, the same Muslim. We were talking about something, and he was talking about some sin he's doing, and I questioned him about it, and he said, "Well, it's okay because later I'll go to Hajj, and that'll erase all my sins." He actually gave a number of 200,000 sins he'll erase. Then he'll go to heaven. And I thought, so wait a minute, you're saying you get to do whatever evil shit you want, and you still get to go to heaven? That's fucking insane. Getting angry again.
So let's not talk about that in that case.
Well, I was done anyway. I
Okay.
just wanted to tell people the logic of some Muslims. And I
So
wasn't like that. And I think it's because my the reasoning I was using wasn't from Islam. It was my own logic. 1+1 = 2. That kind of stuff. And the logic he was using was directly shit from the Quran. So sorry to have that little aside. Let's go back to the
okay.
point.
So I guess so basically, and then there are countries where Muslims have a significant portion, but they still not under Sharia, or they're countries like European countries like France, Germany, and England, and Asian countries. We get India, and we have Canada when it comes to North America, where they are a minority and of a significant percentage. And what happens here is that um they are not completely religious. They are not one. They don't follow the Quran entirely, but they are like moderates. They are moderate Muslims.
I
But
wanna ask you a question and at the same time explain to the audience. There different countries have different kinds of Muslims. That's obvious to people. But let's categorize a little bit differently, okay? I want to
yes,
ask you, you mentioned all the times that at least in the last 200 years that people were trying to bring Islam back to its original state. So
yes,
you mentioned Salafism and Wahhabism. Tell the audience where those came from. Which countries?
Wahhabism. It is predominantly a Saudi culture, I
It
guess.
started in Saudi Arabia. And how about
Yes.
Salafi?
Well, I'm not sure about. I guess it started there too.
Okay, I think it did too. How about Muslim Brotherhood?
You mean the Ummah?
Muslim Brotherhood. Uh, it officially started in Egypt, and all of the Islamic terrorist organizations were born from Muslim Brotherhood. That's what I've heard. That's the
Oh,
grandfather. But Muslim Brotherhood actually, I think, started from stuff like Wahhabism, which is Saudi Arabia. The point, though, is even if you count Egypt as the place where it started, that's an Arabic. That's where Islam kind of started. You know, Islam started in the desert of Saudi Arabia, today's Saudi Arabia, and then it
yes,
spread to the rest of like to the Middle East, like Egypt and Syria and all those areas, and then North Africa all the way up to Turkey, Iran, India, but and that was all by invasion, offensive invasion. But Islam also spread peacefully in some areas,
like
not by
China
invasion.
through
Sorry,
trade.
through
Like
trade, through
Islam,
trade,
yeah, trade.
through trade.
That,
So an example would be very far east countries like Indonesia. Indonesian Muslims, on average, are very different than the Muslims in the original Islamic empire, like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, or Turkey
yes.
or Iran. So I wanna have you explain what you were saying, but with the context that these other countries like Indonesia are very different than Saudi Arabia or Egypt.
So, well, when first and foremost, Islam is predominantly Arabic. It represents Arabic culture, most of it, right? The Quran is in Arabic, even though many languages have translations of the Quran. people consider Arabic Quran as authentic.
Islam considers it that way.
Yes,
It's in
and
the book it says it has to be read in Arabic, right? In
no,
the
I don't
hadith
know.
at
I
least.
don't know.
I don't know either.
So, well, so and also the thing is, some people have a lot of inferiority complex. For example, in India, even though there are a lot of Muslims, the Muslims of higher class, okay, people who are a bit rich, not entirely, not a lot of rich. So what they try to imitate Arab culture. They try to be, they try to pretend that they are descendants from Arab. So
Okay. Okay.
so and they try to behave like that. They say we are not converts, we actually came from Arabia, our ancestors actually came from Arabia. And they try to behave like that. And you know, in India, even especially among the well settled Islam families, Muslim families, there is a lot of inferiority complex there. They have a big inferiority complex, you can see it easily. Okay. And but still, they we can't like, they're still Indian. Okay, actually, there is a very high chance that their ancestors were actually Indians, but they pretend, even though they know, they try to pretend. Okay, they even try to move to Arab and and they try their best to settle there, because for them to live in Arab is like a prestigious thing, to brag in front of their relatives, like we are going to Arab, we're gonna be near to the Makkah and Medina, stuff like that. So it's off topic, anyways. But
Well, it's not really off topic. I think it's all connected. The people you're talking about, if they did make it to Saudi Arabia, um, I'm pretty sure they realize otherwise. Okay,
yeah,
let's clarify for the audience. Okay, there's this thing called Hajj. Hajj means pilgrimage, and what it's referring to in the Islamic context is every year there's, I think it's like a week where Muslims all over the world, the ones that can make it, meet up in Mecca around the Kaaba. Kaaba is this building, really old, from that's actually from before Islam. But anyway, it's like a holy place for Muslims, and they just walk around that building, something like that. Okay, people have seen lots of images like this.
yes, there are a lot of videos.
Yeah, and the conception that Muslims are given about that, well, for one thing, everyone's supposed to wear this white cloth. Similar to, there was something in India with Gandhi. He wanted everyone to wear kind of the same thing. The idea is, hey, we don't have
Khadi,
status. We don't have status. We wanted all the rich and poor people to look the same.
yeah,
And so there's this idea that, hey, we're not racist. Islam's not racist. It accepts every race. And people go to Hajj thinking that, but then they don't get treated that way, if I understand correctly. Like, there's plenty of discrimination against, like in Saudi Arabia, there's plenty of discrimination against anyone who's not Saudi Arabian or not Muslim for that matter.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to
So
add that in there. I just want to give a little bit more context for people, because in order to understand the problem, we need to understand not just Islam, but how people view Islam. Muslims view Islam all over the world, and the different kinds, different flavors of Islam, different ways that I'm going to explain this to people. When is you mentioned that Islam was born from Arab culture. That's correct.
yes,
But to be clear, it's not just purely Arab culture. It's actually kind of whatever Muhammad believed.
yeah. What is, it's completely his belief system.
Yes, yes. Meaning it is not exactly Arab culture. It's a Arab culture through the lens of one dude,
Yes,
and then a few people after him who maybe made changes. And so it's a worse version of the Arab culture. The Arab culture is better. Okay. And then to be clear, when Islam spread everywhere else, it's spreading the language, Arabic, and it's spreading the Islamic culture, but that culture fused with the culture that was already there. So, for example, when Islam spread to India, and since this is my understanding, India was already very peaceful culture. So when Islam merged with it, those two cultures merged, and it was relatively peaceful.
Yes, I have an example for this. See,
Sure.
among the 29 states of India, there is one state which is Kerala. It's a state
Say the name
near the
again.
sea, Kerala.
Kerala.
Kerala. So Islam spread in Kerala through peacefully through trade. Okay, so they are near the seaside. So through trade, there were a lot of Muslim traders who came to Kerala and traded there, and in that way it's spread there peacefully. And until Salafism came, like just before Salafism, like few years before Salafism, it assimilated in there, it integrated with other cultures in
Can you
such a
say
way.
roughly when Salafism started?
I guess it started around 1700s or 1800s, I guess.
Okay, okay.
So
Continue.
for
Sorry.
example, around 1600s, the temples, churches, mosques were built in such a way, it was very hard to find out whether it was uh, temple or a mosque or a church. Okay, they all look the same from outside. The building structure, the architecture look the same from outside. Unless you go inside, you can't say whether it's a temple or a mosque. And people were very peaceful there, like 50% of them were Hindus, the population of Kerala around 1600s, and 30% of them Muslims, and 25% of Christians. They were very peaceful there. So but when Saudi Arabia started, the Salafism spreaded, Wahhabism spreaded. And when Saudi Arabia discovered oil around 1970s, through their petrodollars, they spread a lot of, they gave a lot of funding to spread their ideology of Islam to other parts of the world. And then Kerala started having problems. Right now, there are a lot of incidents happened in Kerala in the past 20 years, and let's say situation there right now is pretty bad. Well, when it comes to religion, religious peace, it lost the peace it had 400 years ago. It's not there. It's a bit
Wow.
very bad thing happening there. Like
That's
there is
not good
an
news. That's not a good
yes.
indication.
It happens everywhere, like whenever Islam tries to bring go back to its root, and it's not in a Muslim majority country, things like that are bound to happen, because the Quran is in such a way, it's written in such a way, it forces you. At one point, people think Islam is good because it you should not lie to people, you should not drink alcohol, you should be good to everybody. That's just tip of the iceberg. But when you go deeper, when you go deep through the book,
So
you
I want to
read the
clarify
Quran.
for the audience, please. Two things I want to say. You mentioned that the Quran forces you. I want to clarify it can't force you, because what it could do, another possibility is you learn more about the Quran and realize it's bullshit and then get out. So that's a possibility. Your brain can do
Yes.
that.
What I'm saying is, right now in the world, I have, as I've said, Europe, in India and Canada, the population is rising there, and they're, let's say, it's not good there. Okay, and then we have the third kind of countries where we have Muslim majority countries, and they can be of two types. One, people are okay with Islam. For example, Saudi Arabia, in that country people are okay with Islam. But in other countries, there is a polarized society is divided into two groups. One who wants secularism, and people who are agnostic, they are atheists, they don't believe in religion anymore, but they are hiding because in a Muslim majority country they will be persecuted for it. And the second one are religious extremists, or the people who want to control people using religion, so they don't want the religion to go away. For example, imams who get benefited by the religion based on how many attendees they have in their mosques.
Or the extreme version is Hajj. Hajj wouldn't exist. Like, I
Yes.
mean, Saudi Arabia as a country makes a lot of money from Hajj.
Yes.
If the world wasn't, if there were no more Muslims, Saudi Arabia loses that gigantic source of income.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so basically, for example, when I said Muslim majority countries, what's happening there? As I said in previous podcast, in Iran 65% of mosques have been shut down permanently because people are not religious anymore. And in Pakistan, as I told you, there is a video which is an year which is like with year ago, 400,000 youngsters are not religious anymore. They are atheists and agnostics, and they are not serious about the religion anymore. When it comes to Bangladesh, uh, some people want to make it more Arabic. They want to bring the Arabic culture there, but people, first and foremost, they are, it's Bangladesh, right? Like desh means a country, okay? Like land, it means the land. Bangladesh means the land of Bangla, the citizens of Bangla. They want to keep their culture. As we know, Islam, I want to tell the audience, Islam is not like other religion. It doesn't integrate with the religion. It tries to destroy the culture wherever it goes, and it tries to bring Arabic culture there. It's, and people don't want that in Bangladesh. They don't want that in Bangladesh. But
What is the percentage of Muslims in Bangladesh? Like roughly, do you know?
95, 97, 99.
Right. So despite that, despite the fact that 95% of the Bangladeshi population is supposedly Muslim, you're saying they don't want it to
A
become
part of
more.
them, a
Sorry,
part of them.
a
Like
part of.
for example, let's say Bangladesh subreddit, every single person who is in that subreddit can read and write English. And they're eventually, I mean, what it means is that they are younger generation people, people not that old, people around, people who have less than 30 years of age. And they don't want that happen, the younger generations don't want that happen. For example, in Turkey, people are not, people don't want to support that guy, the president. What's his name? Edenor something.
Erdogan.
Erdogan, yeah, Erdogan. The younger generations don't want to support him because he's taking religious extremism and getting votes from that. So in Muslim majority countries, we, if either the country is even though the country might be peaceful, there is not a lot of happening there, okay? Because they don't contribute to science, they don't have higher educations. uh, as I said, only around 1% of all the science is because of Muslims. 99% is not because of them, because the religion don't want people to be interested in science. Because any religion, any uh, science and religion are opposite in nature. Science reveals that whatever is preached in a religion, whatever is taught in a religion, is completely fake, and science will give you proof of that. For example, when it comes to evolution, it goes against the theory that Adam and Eve were real. So it tells people that that story is fake.
Well, maybe that's existing religions, but I'm sure somebody could come up with a religion that is compatible with science. But we wouldn't know it as any religion. And using
Yes.
the word religion for it probably wouldn't make sense.
So so basically, what I'm trying to tell you here is Islam is not strong, or it's not gonna be strong, because Islam itself made an enemy of very big industries like the alcohol industry, the banking industry. Like for people who don't know, we can't Muslims cannot take interest. So banking industry is a strict no, and
Well,
alcohol
they can,
industry,
but they'll go to hell.
yeah, they will go to hell.
Unless they go to Hajj and then they go to heaven again.
Yeah. So, and there are a lot more industries like the entire entertainment industry. Like entertain, I don't see what's the problem with entertainment industry. No music, no dance, no entertainment. It's all against the Quran. And then there is, of course, the biggest industry of all time, the porn industry. It's against the porn industry. Like Islam doesn't support that. So as, and also it made science its enemy because the teachings of the Quran don't, are not compatible with science. So I guess science is the biggest enemy of Quran and the modernization. So as long as science advances, technology advances, and people get more and more advanced stuff, the religion is going to get weaker and weaker. And we are seeing this right now. Even in Muslim majority countries, people are not religious anymore, especially the newer generations, the
So
younger
let's
generation.
clarify it this way for people. I if you go back, let's say 2,000 years, or actually, let's just go back 500 years, 600 years.
Yes,
The Renaissance or the Enlightenment age, the scientific revolution had already started. Okay.
yes, around 1600s.
It's actually, you could go back to 1300s even,
Okay,
maybe even earlier. The roots of it in certain countries, maybe 1600s, it was like most of Europe, but the
yes,
roots of it are a few centuries before that even. And let's be clear what Renaissance even is. Renaissance means rebirth. It's the rebirth of learning the classics. The classics is referring to the ancient Greek stuff. And the reason it's called relearning or rebirth is because it was dead for a while, which is what we call the medieval era of
yes,
Europe. And that's when libraries were being burned, and nations couldn't stop invading forces, and there was no science happening. People were barely surviving.
yes,
So the scientific approach, the method of science, was pretty much the same 600 years ago as today. I mean, we do it better now. We have better methods now, a little bit better. But in general, it's the same thing. We just have a more evolved version of it now. But if you
yes.
think of the conclusions of science, 600 years ago, we had barely anything.
Now we have a lot.
Today, we have spaceships, computers, AI.
Yes, AI.
So if you were a Muslim 600 years ago versus a Muslim today, a Muslim 600 years ago didn't have a lot of clear, in your face evidence about
Yes,
the
now they
scientific
do.
approach.
Yes,
But today there's so much more things in your face. You're driving in a car. You have a phone and you're talking to people all over the world within seconds.
in the next 100 years, people will try to settle in Mars.
Yeah. And also, let's see what else. I mean, maybe aliens, if they exist,
Yeah, we may
reveal
find a
themselves to
discovery.
us.
Maybe. So
Yeah.
the thing is, because and also it is the age of internet. People are the information is at your fingertips. Within seconds, you can clear your doubts. You can find information
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
proof.
Internet.
Yes.
And
So
YouTube videos. And you
yes.
finding me after 2 weeks of, did I understand correctly? You were a Muslim 2 weeks ago?
No, I'm not.
You're not. Oh, so I misunderstood from the last episode. Because you said 2 weeks ago you were like all those other.
I mean, when I said I was like others, I mean, as a citizen, I was ignorant of the reality that Islam is.
So you were never a Muslim, you're saying.
No, no, no. I was never a
I
Muslim.
totally misunderstood. And now the title of that,
We can
uh,
change that.
can I change it? Yes, I can change the title. Yeah, yeah, I can change the title in YouTube. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was very confused. I thought you were a Muslim that became an ex-Muslim just 2 weeks ago.
No, no, no. I'm
Okay. Now
actually
I understand.
agnostic
You were
right
just
now.
saying you were unaware of all the things 2 weeks ago. So
I'm actually agnostic right now. I kind of believe that there is a creator, but I don't know whether they exist or not. It's a possibility, but even if they do, we don't know. We can't find out. And
yeah,
all these religions may be the right thing, may not be the right thing. But just because they may be right, we can't promote violence in the name of religion, right? That's why I decided to do all of this, to create awareness. And the problem with Islam is that it haven't reformed yet. Many major religions have changed with time to suit the needs, to be more morally acceptable, but Islam hasn't changed a bit. That's where the problem comes in. And people even support that it shouldn't change. They take pride in it being the same all over the years, and that's why it won't stay any longer. If my guess were to be correct, it's not just my guess, it's already happening. The younger generations are not that religious, not just Islam, every religion, people are not that religious. And the only thing that's supporting Islam is the oil money of Saudi Arabia, and that's not gonna stay long. In next 30 years, even gonna that's gonna be poof, it's gonna go. So after that, most Muslims won't have anything to promote their religion. Okay, they won't have any power anymore. And the second thing is, if you see, majority of Muslim countries are poor, and they also have, as I said, they don't have any science contributions. Technology is very lacking there. They're not engineers or scientists. They're just an average consumer. They don't even have basic education. So, and science is revealing that their religion is fake. So the only, and what we should do, we should prevent Islam from spreading to European countries for the next 30 years. If we can do that, if we can just hold out, then we would have win eventually. And the
So you're
second,
talking about immigration.
not just immigration, I'm not talking about immigration, I'm just talking about awareness. So even if, the thing is, Islam can spread, the major way it spreads is through womb, like the women, by having high birth rates. And the second thing is through conversion. Even though people immigrate, like we have Jewish people who immigrate a lot, but they are all
Well,
over
are
the
the
world.
converts dangerous though?
Huh?
The people who convert to Islam, are they dangerous?
Well, at first they completely support it. Come on, why would you convert into a religion if you know that it's not good? They are unaware of it. They're just ignorant. But once they realize, they will have a chance, assuming that they can take care of their own. For example, let's take a woman. If she is pregnant and she has a few kids and she has to depend on her husband, and she realizes that Islam is fake, now she can't convert into an atheist. I mean, she can't become an ex-Muslim anymore, because she has to depend on her husband and her kids. So it's that situation happens.
I
For
think I know
example,
what you're saying. I think I know what you're saying. This sort of happened to me too. You're saying that even if a Muslim became, even if a convert uh, isn't dangerous themselves, but they get married to someone who's a Muslim and
yes,
then they have kids, that convert who, let's say, in their mind became a closet ex-Muslim, they can't really stop the child from becoming one of the Muslims.
yes,
Yeah, but here's the thing. So in a lot of cases, the mother is the one that spends more time with the child than the father.
yes,
At least in the past, I don't know too much about the future. I think that's how it is for most families. So if the mother is a closet ex-Muslim and the father is always at work, there's the children is going to be more like the mom thinking than the father's thinking.
but we also have to consider the madrasas and all these places where
Yeah, do
they
you think
teach.
that? And I want to present this as a question because this is all like I don't know anything about this.
Yes,
Do you think the people that end up in a madrasa? By the way, madrasa just means school, and it's weird to me that people call that word to mean Quranic school or Islamic school. I don't know who calls them madrasa. Is it just the West calling it that, or I don't know where that term comes from because in Arabic it just means school, madrasa.
it's commonly used to represent Muslim Islamic schools in countries like India, Pakistan,
So if
Bangladesh.
those countries call it that, so they're using the Arabic words wrong because Arabs do not use the word madrasa to refer to Islamic school. It just means school. I
Yeah.
was in a madrasa in Syria, which had would never mention Quran because it's just primary school.
Oh,
Yeah, that's all. So it's really weird to me that the whole world is calling these Islamic schools a madrasa. Um, Anyway, here's what I wanted to ask. The people that end up in one of these Islamic schools and become radicalized, I'm
There is a
guessing
very
I'm guessing it's first they had to have a pretty Islamic and radicalized mindset before they got into the madrasa, right? If you were a Muslim raised in a very liberal family, and then somehow you ended up in a madrasa, I don't think you're going to become radicalized. If anything, it's going to show you how evil shit is, and you'll get out.
well, it goes both ways. You can see it for what it is, and you get away from it, or you can be brainwashed and you believe it seriously, and you won't accept any logic that says
Right, but
otherwise.
but the ideas in your head that are going to be the determining factor of which way you end up, and it's a major factor is how you were raised. So if your mother was a
Yes.
very liberal person, even if she's a Muslim, because there are liberal Muslims. My mom is one, or was one.
Okay.
She's not a Muslim anymore.
Okay.
She came from a liberal family. My dad came from a liberal family. It was very peaceful. Uh, we didn't even know all the evil shit in Islam, by the way, because actually, even my parents didn't know.
Well, most of us, even today, most people don't know. For example, in India, most Muslims don't know. Same goes for US. Most US people don't know.
And there's sort of an excuse for Indians because you guys don't know Arabic. My parents both know Arabic. They can read and
Oh,
write Arabic. They can,
okay.
and I want to be clear for people, just because you can read and write Arabic, today's Arabic is different than 7th century Arabic. Okay.
Hmm.
So it's still very difficult for a Arabic speaking person who lived in let's say Syria their whole life and went to school and learned Arabic their whole life. The way you and I are speaking English now, it's still very difficult for them to understand Quran Arabic.
Yeah. It's
But
like,
they have a better chance than somebody in India,
yes, they have a better chance.
and they don't read it.
Yes.
My parents never read the Quran.
Even here, people don't read it. The imams and the sheikhs, they explain it to them.
Yes, 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 yes. Which is and they explain like a little bit more details. First, we get some explanation from our parents. And
Yeah.
where did our parents get it from? From their parents. And where did they get it from? From their parents. All the way back to Muhammad. It's just stories people are telling each other.
Yes.
There's not a lot of going back to the Quran to relearn things. There is some of it happening. They do sometimes bring stuff back up from the Quran. I mean, that's what would explain Wahhabism and Salafism.
Yes.
It's people trying to go back to the Quran and argue things from the Quran and trying to say, hey, you Muslims are doing it wrong. You've deviated from the Quran.
Yes. So what I'm trying to tell is, if we spread aware, so most people in the West, or most people, the liberals in other countries, what they're trying to protect the fundamentalists and the radicals, or Islam in general, because whatever when we are trying to bring awareness about Islam, what the liberals will do is that they will just label us as Islamophobes. They will call us racist. And whenever we try to criticize about Islam, what they'll say, they say, what they use, what about this, what about that, and they'll change the topic. They beat around the bush. And also, the media is in the current situation, the Western media is portraying Muslims as innocents. They are using victim cards. And most Muslim these days, the advantages of Muslims have right now is playing as a victim card. They are not using force anymore. They are not promoting Islam through the sword. Right now, their main advantages are victim card playing, and then hiding the truth and denying the truth, saying that
And the West protecting them with
yes,
concepts like Islamophobia and using that label on people like you and me.
yes, we just want to criticize it. We're not even criticizing, we just want to bring awareness about it. No matter what we say, they're just going to label us Islamophobe, and people will stop listening to us. That's what
Well,
I
but
want to
those are
do.
only the stupid people. So
Well, if someone, Well, let's say, for example, let's say there is a third person, and let's say we try to explain him what exactly is in the Quran, and we try to explain it to him, and what he will do is, because he don't know about Islam, or he haven't heard any of those violent things, he will just think that we are just some right wing
And he's
people.
lying to himself, and he's stupid.
Yes.
Smarter people don't do that.
Well, people don't. The thing is, it's not about being smart or dumb. It's more about they neglect it. The thing, it's not a big deal. It's not a big
I
deal,
think it
most
is
people.
an issue of smart and dumb. And the way you get smart is stuff like you become a scientific thinker.
Yeah.
And the people that didn't develop scientific thinking, they're the ones who get fooled by this retarded shit.
Yes. The thing is, we need to bring awareness about what Islam is capable of doing, how much violence it is capable of doing. And if we can do that, and we can show people, then we won't be called Islamophobes anymore. We won't be called racists or right wing politicians anymore, because at that point, people will understand what we are saying, and then they will be aware of Islam, and they will take precautions against it. They won't convert mindlessly, or they won't support them when they play victim card. Okay.
Now, what are the obstacles? So, one you just mentioned one of the obstacles to awareness, which is you said we get labeled Islamophobe, and what that leads to is, and this is in the current environment, social media platforms will cancel you.
Yes.
So now we can't even speak. So, as an example, Dr. Wafat Sultan, do you know that person?
No, I don't know him.
Okay, so she's very famous because, or one of the, she became famous when she did an interview, or not an interview, a debate on the Al Jazeera channel, and she did the debate with some imam, and they were arguing about Islam, and it got really famous. She became really famous. She has millions of followers now. She's written books, and she's been labeled an Islamophobe. And Facebook has, you know, I remember her saying that Facebook would take down one of her posts and they would say it doesn't meet our community standards, but then she can't tell why, because it's very vague, and they're all that's happening is, and I see this all over Reddit too. Basically, what happens is a Muslim will report a post and say it doesn't meet Facebook standards or Reddit standards. And then that Muslim might go further and try to get more Muslims to report it also. So now you have, let's say, 100 people doing reports. And just from the weight of the reports, the Facebook or Reddit admins will look at that and say, okay, we're going to take this down. We don't want to upset people. And it doesn't
Yes.
matter whether it was logical or not. The only thing that matters
Yes.
is how many reports happened. It's like
Yes.
it's like, oh, somebody got offended. Let's stop whatever thing that offended them, which is
Yes.
retarded because people choose what they're offended by. It doesn't have to be
Yes. It's a very
something.
subjective thing.
It doesn't even have to be evil. You can get offended for anything. And
Yes,
that's
but
the logic they're using when they take down these posts.
it's
I
like they're
remember there was a post. Listen to this one. There was a post. Let me do other examples. There's a group called, it's in Arabic, mostly Arabic people, right? But it's translated to Atheism Without Borders. It's co-founded by a man named Wissam Hassan. He told me his group it has 70,000 people now. His group got taken down 14 times. He had to remake it 14 times because
That's how the
Facebook would
situation
take
is.
it down and not just freeze it or whatever. It's erased from the internet. And he would have to figure out how to go speak to all those people again, gather all the people again to remake the group of 70,000, and then they would kill it and remake the group and then kill it and so on. To the point that he had to develop these very secret methods. Let me tell you his method to avoid getting erased. If if somebody reports one of his posts in his group, he will first look to see. He'll skim the post, and if it doesn't look like there's any problem to him, he will immediately remove the person that made the report from the group. Then he will delete the post. Then he will send a message to the person that made the post and tell him, and now he has to lie. He can't even say the real reason he's doing it. And I'll tell you why if you want to ask. He tells the person, hey, according to Facebook guidelines, I had to take this down. And I don't really know why, because Facebook guidelines are not clear. But if you want, sometimes it works, go ahead and post it again. And now if he posts it again, it won't get reported because that guy is gone.
Yeah.
That's the system he had to implement. Very secretive one. Hopefully it doesn't get around to anyone because I just exposed it.
I don't think people will take notice.
Hopefully, yeah, because those are all Arabic speakers anyway. That's the system he had to implement in order to prevent the next erasing of his group. This kind of thing is blocking awareness from happening.
That's what we should do.
It's these obstacles that have to be removed in order for us to achieve this awareness goal.
So basically, that's what we're trying to do. The only way Islam can still exist, basically it can't exist in the next 100 years if things go the way that's happening right now. The violence that the Muslims doing in Europe is gonna come and bite them, right? People have a very negative opinion about Muslims, so that's gonna play for their own disadvantage, for Muslims disadvantage. And once Saudi Arabia runs out of money, it can't do anything. It can't fund those mosques, it can't fund those imams and the radicals anymore. So even right now, the prince of Saudi Arabia, he's trying to liberalize the country, is attracting tourism so that the country can stabilize, because 97% of the GDP comes from oil. Saudi Arabia's GDP comes from oil. So we are winning. We're actually winning. Even if we don't do anything, we have a very high chance of winning. But the only obstacle here is that the people's ignorance. People are ignoring that. People don't know what's happening. People don't know why Islam is a problem. And if we don't care about that, then the world will move forward. Islam will still exist. And as I mentioned, as I said, what happened to Afghanistan and Turkey, there is always a chance that it might do another revival moment. So what I'm saying is, we should, since it's getting weaker and weaker, we should spread awareness so that people will be aware of Islam as a brutal, evil religion, because it's against moral principles. That today's morality, it's against that.
And let's be clear for the audience, there's versions of Islam. Of course, there should be only one, but there's versions. And yeah, there's peaceful versions. There's peaceful versions of Islam. I don't know that there's a lot of them. There's one, I forget the name. There's one version of Islam that is very spiritual.
You mean Ahmadi?
I don't know the name. I can't remember right now. That one doesn't ring a bell. I remember watching videos of this version of Islam, and there's these people with long hair, men with long hair even, and they're spinning. I don't know what that is. It's just a thing they do. Anyway, it's a spiritual thing, or spiritual version of Islam, where they care about the spirituality and not all the other stuff. And I think that's good that kind of thing exists. And it's to say that you mentioned Judaism and Christianity reformed. Islam needs to reform.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. When Islam loses its power, when the most Muslim, see, the thing is, most Muslim countries don't have any power. They are poorer countries, they are consumer countries, they contribute nothing to science and technology, they are just consumers. And the average IQ of people in a Muslim majority country is like mostly Arab countries is around 75 or something, which is very far below, which is very far below. And we need to prevent two things. It's more about prevention. That what when I said we should do something ASAP, what I'm trying to tell you, the solution is prevention. We need to prevent two things, and we need to do a third thing which I already said, which is bringing awareness. It's not a prevention, it's more of a taking action against the ignorance that people have. And the prevention is two things. We need to make sure two things. It's not like we should do something, it's more like if these two things are prevented, then Islam is gonna go away with the time. It will die a natural death. The first thing that should not happen is the Muslim countries, other Muslim countries, it may not be Saudi Arabia, but any other Muslim country getting power, and that power becoming Islam's power. Okay, and
What kind of
for
power?
example,
Can you be more clear?
it means power, in other words, people depending, countries depending on it, on that particular country. For example, most countries depend on Saudi Arabia for oil and petrol because
Okay.
their entire country depends on it. So if
Okay. So like economic or resource power. All right.
yes, resource power, any power for that matter. So if that happens, then history is going to repeat itself if such thing happens. And the second thing that we should prevent is we can't let the immigration, we can't let the Muslim population reach a lot, because if it becomes like, for example, the Europe, entire Europe is in a danger of becoming Muslim majority in the next 30 years, or maybe in the next 100 years. There is a very high chance, because of immigration, all, because the European Union gives free education and all that stuff. And we know Muslims have high birth rates because their religion tells them to have more children. And since the European Union gives you free education, it's not like they're gonna lose anything when they have more children. For example, if you are in India and if you have like 10 kids, most people can't even they can't take care of two kids. They don't have that much money. So in a country like India, even though they are Muslims, they won't have more than three children. Okay, but in a country like in a countries like European countries where there is free education,
It's not
then
just free education. There's people in the UK that are able to live completely on welfare for decades
yes, and that's a problem. It's like a
while they're
breeding.
pumping out babies.
Yes, so that's like a breeding ground for Islam, where you get more radicals. The breeding ground for radicals, and we should do something about that. It's not, I mean, things start slowly. We need to take baby steps. What I'm telling people to do is just spread awareness to all these non-Muslims. Tell them Islam is not just your average religion. It's not peaceful. It's an authoritative religion which is hell bent on conquering the entire world, dominating the entire world. If people realize the truth, then of course, like how Europeans are voting right wing politicians, they will do things like that to prevent it from rising. And it won't be violent, it won't be that violent. Okay, that's what we're trying, that's what our goal should be. And it starts simple, it's very simple. Each and every individual should just try to bring awareness to one person, in like in every 6 months or every 4 months or every 3 months. Let's assume that if you bring awareness to a person in a 2 months, in a span of 60 days.
Well, let's say they're afraid of losing their life or losing their family or whatever. What they could do is what you just did. You can come onto my show or anybody's show and talk with me anonymously, and then that way you're protected. And this is talking to more than one person right now. I mean, I only have 100 followers now, but suppose I get to 500,000, and this video that we just made is still on the internet. You know, millions of people are going to watch it. That's better
Yeah,
than talking to one person, and it's safer.
Yes. Yeah, that's my intention. I'm not saying you should go and reveal yourself. I'm not saying that. And actually, it's much simpler than that. There are a lot of YouTubers like you, who are ex-Muslims or who are atheists, or people who are aware of Islam, and they want to bring light about it, right? There is this guy called Harry Sultan, and he posted of all the violence that happened in France that Muslims did, and we can just share such videos. Right now Muslims are getting a lot of sympathy because of Palestine, right? But if because of that people are ignoring what's happening around Europe, what the Muslims are doing, okay, if we bring awareness about their acts, then we can prevent it from spreading, we can reduce its growth or
And
its
we have the
speed.
best opportunity to do that today than ever any time in the past.
Yes, in the age of internet, it's very simple. You just need to share the videos, the podcasts, or the reels, and you don't even have to do research about Islam. You don't even have to read the Quran. You just need to. There is always that one guy who did all the research, and you just need to share that. You just need to just click a button, and that's what I'm trying people to do. There are like 160,000 ex-Muslims in the ex-Muslim subreddit, and each one of them, not each one of them,
A
even
lot of them are not ex-Muslims, and a lot of them are never Muslims, by the way.
yes, like me, but
Yeah, yeah. And I got confused by that. I thought you were an
yes,
ex-Muslim.
some of them are just there to
To
spread some
help
hate.
the world. This is a world problem.
Yes, some
This is
people
not just
just
a
want to
local
take off the
problem
steam.
of wherever you are. This is a world problem.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to tell to all of those people in that subreddit, which just need to share. There are a lot of YouTubers out there. We can just share this, and we
Well,
can ask those
I'll tell you, I have a guess as to why somebody thought you were trying to spread a hate campaign. It's because there was a couple of times here where I tried to clarify something you said, where you said at one point you said and maybe you didn't use the word all, but it could have been taken as all Muslims or all versions of Islam
yeah.
or even when you said the death of Islam, but natural death of Islam. Another way to look at it is natural death of the worst versions of Islam.
I don't think so. The thing is, there is no word. The thing is, people who are moderates, people who are liberals in Islam, are not exactly liberals. I mean, they're not exactly Muslims. They're just culturally Muslims.
Sure, sure,
People,
sure. But yeah, yeah, but they're still Muslims by whatever definition you want to give here. Let's let
yes,
you know, you know, especially when the context of Westerners trying to understand what a Muslim is.
yes,
That father that I told you about earlier, who's doesn't really do anything, only at face value, and only keeping the label for his social network.
yes,
I mean, that person is still a Muslim. I get what you mean by yeah, we can say he's not a Muslim by some certain definition, and a lot of Muslims do that. The ISIS Muslims were killing people who claimed to be Muslims, but they were a different version.
yes.
So
I mean, my goal is not to spread hate to Muslims. I know Muslims are good, but the religion that they are preaching, there even Muslims themselves don't know the reality of what they are preaching. And if we can spread light to it, then we can increase the number of ex-Muslims, because people realize their religion and they will just leave it, or
let me
they try
give
to make
people
a
an
reform.
example of s- spreading hate. Although I don't know how effective this spreads hate. When Muslims pray, and I know because I used to pray, and I know what I used to say. I mean, I didn't know what it meant initially. They train us to memorize the Quran,
Yes,
but they don't tell us what it means. So I have verses in my head of the Quran that I can still repeat today. And for decades, I didn't know what it meant until later I went to search out what it meant. So Muslims, when they pray, every single prayer, they are saying, curse the Jews, curse the Christians, among other
oh,
things they're saying.
okay,
And they don't know that they're saying that.
yes, they might
It's
not know
really
about
fucked
it.
up.
Yes. So that's what I'm trying to tell. The thing is, we are actually in a good position, as I said before. Islam is just gonna. It's not just Islam. Every single religion is just gonna fade away with time. And the reason why Islam is still able to exist after 1500 years is because of its rigid principles and people preach following them.
Well, I want to say, according to a particular imam, and I believed what he said here, he wasn't lying, he was telling the truth. He was asked about the apostasy laws, the death penalty for leaving
Yeah,
Islam.
that's the major reason why it still exists.
He
Yes.
said, well, if we get rid of the apostasy laws, then we would have no Muslims. So we can't do that.
Yes.
So he's admitting that Islam is being propped up mainly, but just by the death penalty.
There are a
Because I
lot
want
of
to clarify for people who don't know, obviously, when you have a death penalty for leaving Islam, that pressures you to not speak up. And then
not
that
just in.
means people are not hearing what you think about things. So
Yes.
other people, Muslims who don't know shit, could be hearing from these other ex-Muslims, but they're not, because these ex-Muslims are closeted and don't want to get killed. And just to do another version of this, I think we talked about this in the last episode. No, this was with somebody else. In Egypt, let me take a step back. 7 years ago, I did an interview with a gentleman from Egypt. He had a YouTube channel, 5,000 people watching him. And then recently, I wanted to find that interview and find him and find his YouTube channel and communicate with him over email. He doesn't exist on the internet anymore, and I know why, because this happens repeatedly in Egypt. What happens is the government finds him on the internet. Then they find him in real life. And then they threaten him with, in this case, not the death penalty. They threaten him with 10 years in prison. And then in
Yeah.
order for him to avoid prison, he erases his entire internet presence. My interview included. That's fucked up. That's what's causing the lack of awareness.
Well,
This
if
is, what,
you
this is one of the obstacles.
actually, that's the most efficient way to remove all obstacles. If ex-Muslims come forward and tell what's wrong with their religion, because there will be a lot of credibility, even dumb people will listen. Actually, that's actually the best thing to happen. If there were no
That's why,
consequence.
yes, that's why I mentioned Dr. Wafat Sultan,
Hmm.
who has millions of followers. They're trying to shut her down from speaking. The West is, by calling her an Islamophobe. I don't mean the whole West, obviously.
I mean, the West doesn't want to lose consumers. Simply, in other words, Facebook don't want to lose consumers, so they just shut her down. It's more quality versus quantity thing.
in those cases, yeah, but there's people who have a principled reasons for calling her an Islamophobe. I found a website that was related. How did I look for it? I looked for Wafat Sultan something, and in there I found a website that is trying to expose Islamophobes worldwide, and it has a list of all what they call Islamophobes. And Wafat Sultan is one of them that they call Islamophobe, and they quote her saying a few things. And the thing they quoted her saying was something really basic, like it's in reply to somebody must have asked her, hey, "Are you against radical Islam or Islam?" And she said, "I'm against Islam." That's why they called her an Islamophobe.
Because most people believe that Islam is just an ordinary religion, where nothing can go wrong. But they don't see the connection why 99% of terrorists are Muslims, and their acts of terrorism, the reason for them committing terrorist acts is religion. That's even more important thing. Why do
People
they
would
do?
disagree about that in a particular case, the Israel-Palestine situation. And it
Yeah.
is more than just religion, but definitely religion is a factor.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe on both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. The
Yeah.
thing is, to the thing is, if apostasy laws were to be removed, then both of the things that I wanted to prevent will happen. I mean, both of the things will be prevented, where people will become aware of Islam, and people will basically they will distance themselves from Islam, and
Or
it
at
won't
least from the
spread
worst
anymore.
versions of it. They might become like that father I told you, who's only
Yes,
Muslim in name for his social network, and there's no evil in any of it.
yes. And also there are a lot of Muslims who are moderates, or they're not Salafis. They don't actually, because most of them are chill with it, right? For example, majority of Indians who grew up in a mixed society, in a mixed environment, and uh, educate follow like who go to school, college, complete their graduation and get a job, they are like every your other person you see. But the extremists you find, they have a childhood in a very isolated place. Their entire childhood is in a very isolated place, and they believe that that's the reality, and they were, so for them it's very hard to accept the modern world, and they demonize the modern world. So the
Yep.
solution is simple. The thing is, what's happening right now is that Islam, or for the fact any religion, all religions are getting weaker and weaker with time, and Islam is one of them. And Islam is actually the first one will fall, because when modern times, when with science improves, people will follow their religion only if it's flexible enough, if it's morally correct. And Islam is not both of those, so it will be the first one to fade away with time. And to make that happen, we need to bring more awareness. If apostasy can if apostasy has no bad consequences, then we will find a lot of apostates in countries like Iran, in countries like Pakistan, even in Bangladesh. We find a lot of people, even in Turkey, I guess. And even if we don't find apostates, we'll find people who are just culturally Muslim and not practicing, non-practicing Muslims. People who don't want to become ex-Muslims, because being a Muslim is a part of their identity and they don't want to lose it, so they just end up becoming non-practicing Muslims.
Or they are
That's
practicing. They're practicing what they think are the good parts, and they're
yes,
not practicing the stuff they don't agree with.
yes. That's what we should strive to achieve, to bring awareness. Right now in India, the thing is, we have something called Hindutva, which is radical. You can say they are Hindu radicals trying to protect the culture. What they say, they want to protect the culture of India, they want to protect the Hindu culture. And what they say, Islam is a threat to our culture, which is partly true. They don't fear Christianity, they don't fear Buddhism, Jainism, they don't fear those things. But the only religion they fear is Islam. And it's been, and so they are trying their best to not let Muslims get power in India. And basically the Hindutva people, the RSS, it's another name for them, the RSS, they ended up doing things which are not good, discrimination against Muslims and violent acts against innocent Muslims. And because of that, Muslims are getting like a soft,
Well, I'm
they are
sure
getting,
ex-Muslims are too because of the same thing,
yes,
like the
what
closet
we,
ex-Muslims.
yes. Well, we just need to fight Islam with science, information, and facts. That's it. We just need to question. We just need to leave questions in people's mind and let the Muslims answer it. We don't need to force any opinions. We don't need to say this is bad, this is good. We'll just ask questions. Why
Yeah,
this
that's
is this way?
actually why when I talk to a Muslim, like when they come into the ex-Muslim subreddit and they say something like "Ask me anything" or "Let's have a Islam discussion,"
Yeah,
my standard response 99% of the time is, "Why do you believe in Islam?"
yeah,
I don't start telling them what's wrong with Islam.
yes. Because if we do
I
that
just want to know
way,
what they think first. Then I'll
yes,
pick apart what they said.
and it's actually better for the third person, whoever listening there, because they will get an idea of what's happening there. If we straight
Yeah,
up
yeah.
say that
I
this
never
is
thought about
bad,
that.
the religion is bad, then they're gonna think they are an Islamophobe. They will just label us as an Islamophobe. But if we just
Oh.
ask them questions, we just make a debate, then it will be, mm, they will understand the
I
reality
wouldn't
too.
even call it a debate because I'm not trying to argue anything with them. I'm only trying to find out how they think. And then if they want, they can get interested in how I think. And then they can ask me and then I'll explain. There's no debate there.
Yeah,
We're
that
just
works
I'm
too.
just trying to have a discussion where each of us trying to find out what the other one thinks, and that's it.
That's it. Yes, that's simple, and
Not
that's
a
the
debate.
reason why. I mean, but like few days ago, I went to the Pakistan subreddit, and actually, I found a lot of level-headed people there. People are very smart in that subreddit. Even like we have Indian subreddit, but Indian subreddit people just show emotions. They talk with emotion. The basis of their opinion or reason is emotion itself, not actual facts. But in Pakistan subreddit, people talk with, even though they don't emotionally agree with something, they speak objectively, and
That's very
that's,
interesting what you're telling me. I wouldn't have
yeah.
guessed that.
And people openly saying that religion which is disproved multiple times by science, people still following it as a, and you can see a lot of Pakistan people in, especially people in Pakistan subreddit, they're very chill, they're very liberal. Okay. And I guess the majority, the youth in general in most of the Muslim majority countries, the reason why they are become atheist or agnostic or secular, because they are seeing Islam 100%, they're seeing it what it can do or what it is doing. The people in US, India, or Russia, for the fact, they don't know what Islam can do. People will only know what Islam can do in a Muslim majority country, and that's what happening in those countries. The youth is losing interest in that religion because they are saying it's not compatible these days. And that's what we should do. We should show them what's happening in the Muslim majority countries. We should ask why there are rules against apostrophe, blasphemy,
By the
and
way, that is my second most standard question. Do you do you know why apostasy laws exist?
to prevent people from
Well, I'm not
leaving
asking you.
religion.
I'm just saying that's the question I ask Muslims.
Okay.
After I ask them why do you believe in Islam, my next most common question, and sometimes I put them together, why do you believe in Islam and do you know why apostasy laws exist?
They will just beat around the bush and they'll say, this is this, they'll do mental gymnastics and they'll just leave
They
because
don't
they don't know
reply.
the answer.
I have not gotten a reply.
Wow.
Let me rephrase. If I sometimes I don't ask the first question, I only ask the second question. Do you know why
Okay.
apostasy laws exist? And a lot of them, when they do reply, they start immediately defending stuff like they say, "Well, you live in a Western country. Why do you care? You're never gonna right." Like, so, and another one thing they say is, "No, there's no apostasy laws. There's only blasphemy laws. Like you have to." And they use the word treason.
Yeah, treason.
Yeah, treason. And then they try to defend it by saying, "Well, you guys in the West have treason laws also." And by
But
the
there
way,
is no.
I want to steelman their argument there. There is something that is being done in the West that is bad related to that. When the US treats a whistleblower as a traitor, that's the same evil shit.
Just I have a doubt. What does a whistleblower means?
Okay, so let me just do an example. And this is I don't remember like okay, Edward Snowden is one of the whistleblowers. He used to work for one of the like CIA. I don't know which one of those. NSA maybe.
Okay.
And what the NSA was doing was collecting information about Americans, uh, emails and video and calls, and recording that, which is illegal. It goes against the Constitution for one thing. but they were doing it against the will of the people for almost a decade until he exposed it. What he's exposing is something that the US government is doing against the US people, and it's evil and it's against the law. So that's a good thing he's doing. Now, if
Yes.
the US government is going to treat him as a traitor, what that means is they're saying he's against the people. He's
Yeah.
not. The country, the US, is the people, not the fucking government. The government is only a thing for our benefit. You can't
I
treat
understand.
you can't treat the country as the government. The government doesn't matter. Fuck the government. That's why we do things like get rid of the administration every 4 years.
I think what the government tried to do is using the treason as an excuse to punish him for what he did.
So that others
That's
don't do it also.
Yes, that's what the Muslim majority countries are doing too. They want
The
people to
apostasy
leave
law.
religion.
Exactly.
Yeah,
With apostasy laws. Yeah. I mean, it might not
and
be the
most of
death
the
penalty. Treason law can give you the death penalty. But it's all the same. It's trying to shut you up. It's trying to, I'm going to use these words now, okay? A group, let me start with a person, okay? Have you ever heard the phrase, stupid is as stupid does?
no once I guess once
It comes
somewhere.
from a movie. I mean, I'm sure it's older than that, but I heard it in a movie, Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump, his mother would tell him this thing, and in the movie he says, "My mama always told me, stupid is as stupid does," and he has all these sayings from his mom. Well, let me clarify this sentence. Say it another way. I am stupid to the extent that I do stupid things. And by the same logic, a group is a cult to the extent that it does cult behaviors.
Yeah,
So the US government, when it treats a whistleblower as a traitor, that's a cult behavior, and the US is acting like a cult.
yeah.
Maybe we should end that there. This is the perfect ending.
Yes, yes, this is the perfect ending.
Yes. And we just hit almost 2 hours, 1:59. So I'm going to, we'll call this the end right now. And the next episode, I don't know when I want to schedule it yet. I know you said you're free until June something, but in the next,
I mean, I'm free until 27th.
yeah, maybe we'll do it soon in the next 6 days, but I have a lot of work to do because I have to do a lot of work for the June 14th event.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, June 14th, I have a lot coming up. And when I do these kind of things, and by the way, these podcast episodes, I'm only releasing them once a week.
Oh, it's
And I
fine
have
by
other
me.
ones besides yours, so this one I probably won't release for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's fine. I
Yeah.
completely fine.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's it. Have a good day and talk to you next time. All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.